What's up, nerds? Crem of the Earth here, booming right back at you for a review of Rhythm of War. It's the fourth book in the mainline Stormlight Archive series. Also part of the bigger picture of Cosmere books as a whole. I don't think we need any more introduction. Let's just hop right in. Before we begin though, big spoilers ahead, watch out. So at the beginning of this book, everyone's kind of together in Urithiru, and then they kind of split off into three groups. First group focuses on Navani, Venli, and Kaladin. For most of this section, the Tower of Urithiru has been taken over by the Fused. Navani spends most of this time researching, doing at first research on Fabrials, and then into Stormlight, Lifelight, and Voidlight. Navani ends up bonding with the sibling. Venli spends most of the book looking for ways out of Odium's grasp. Gets a little bit of an opportunity to play around with Will Shaper powers. Towards the end of the book, she also helps free the tower. Venli and some of the Fused end up breaking off and meeting up with the Listeners. And then there's Kaladin. He spends a good chunk of this book as a surgeon, and then about halfway through the book, he ends up spending most of his time trying to free Urithiru. In our next grouping of people, we have Shallan, Adolin, and Pattern primarily. Most of Adolin's arc is spent trying to revive Maya. This all kind of culminates in his trial in Lasting Integrity. During the course of Adolin's trial, we learn that Maya and the rest of the Deadeyes chose to be Deadeyes. I don't think they realized that it was going to be as painful as it was, but this was a path that they chose. Most of Shallan's arc is learning to kind of accept herself and the mistakes that she's made in the past. And then at the end, she rejects Formless. Formless kind of being the worst parts of herself rolled into one terrible burrito. It's more than that, but just imagine a burrito. I should get a burrito. This kind of culminates in her rejection of the Ghostbloods telling her to kill Restares. Restares is, of course, Kalak, the Herald. Apparently, he's been spending a lot of time in Lasting Integrity. We learn that Shallan actually ended up killing her first Spren. And then towards the end of the book, the Veil personality kind of merges into Shallan's personality. Dalinar's on the warpath for a good amount of this book. He's in Emul, administering the war there. And then he goes to find Ishar, the Herald of Bondsmiths, and, you know, hijinks ensue. We find out that Moash is completely irredeemable at this point. He really is just the worst. I have an outdated video on it here, but all of those points still stand. Oh, and then we have Taravangian. He spends a good portion of the first part of this book setting up a betrayal of the Coalition. We spend an interlude with him where he plans out a few of his next moves. He makes some plans to use Zeth and Nightblood against Odium. And then at the end of the book, he kills the vessel of Odium. Yeah, big stuff. And then he ascends. Yikes. Yeah, let's talk about the lore for a bit. Lore-wise. So we found out a good amount about Stormlight, Lifelight, Voidlight, and how they're all kind of related to one another. It was interesting to see just how the three types of light can intermingle. However, we have yet to see what sort of strengths and weaknesses every sort of light has. We found out about anti-light, which is kind of like the polar opposite of the different types of light. We found out a ton about the rhythms, how they relate to light, how they relate to Roshar, and just investiture in general. We even learned a little bit about Dawn Singers, what was going on with the Parshendi before humans showed up. It was interesting to see that the Dawn Singers were using the Surges before humans arrived on Roshar. We got a lot of good stuff about Honor Spren and their stronghold of Lasting Integrity in Shadesmar. We got all sorts of weird stuff going on with Ishar too. Learned a decent amount about his connection powers. Yeah, this dude's nuts, but he can do some wild stuff. Our boy Ishar the Herald is doing some straight up war crimes. He's like pulling Spren into the physical realm for some reason. And then we have Odium. First and foremost, Uncle T is Odium now. Like, that's big. This is pretty wild, dude. And it was fun seeing Odium a little desperate before, you know, we learned a good amount of lore in this one. Yeah. That being said, I think we should score this puppy. Okay, overall story. Navani's arc took up most of the story. Her arc felt stretched out, a little bit thin. I think it focused a little bit too heavily on the lore in general. It brought a good portion of the book to just a screeching halt. However, I quite enjoyed her arc in general of just reviving the sibling, learning how to accept herself as a scholar. I felt like there should have been less Navani chapters, but I was never actively disappointed reading through them. Ven Lee's arc had a different problem. I found myself being quite frustrated with her as a character at times. I do think that it was quite nice and poetic that her journey started and ended with helping her mom. Her flashbacks themselves were one of my favorite parts of the book. I loved seeing more Ashonai, and man, that chapter at the end with the Stormfather and Ashonai was, beautiful. Kaladin's arc, I think, was the strongest in the book. While his incessant arguments with Lirin, his dad, did get quite annoying at times, I do think that Sanderson really sold the idea of Kaladin finally letting go, you know, letting himself accept that he can't protect everyone. And man, that dramatic flare of him jumping off the building and meeting with Tien, just, another chef's kiss. Shallan and Adelin's section, it had a fantastic build-up and then just got positively hamstrung by being left out of the third part. And I do think it was also kind of disappointing how it just kind of ended after the trial. I believe there was one more Shallan chapter after that, but not really a whole lot of resolution there. I found the trial itself to be quite enjoyable. I do wish we got more of the Honorspren politics. It was kind of like, oh yeah, the Honorspren have a lot of politics going on, just, you know, over there. And that brings us to Dalinar and Yasma's section. A good portion of the book is just setting up Teravangian's betrayal. And then, you know, it happens. The biggest disappointment was the betrayal had almost no consequences at all. Since Dalinar saw it coming, the troops were all in place to prevent it from doing any damage. And honestly, Dalinar didn't have a lot to do this book. However, visiting Ishar at the end and ending with that whole set piece was quite nice. I really wish we'd got more of that, and really just Dalinar playing with his powers in general. Sanderson spent a good portion of this book playing around with themes of accepting one's personal limitations, responsibilities, as well as strengths. Kaladin goes through the process of accepting that to be himself, he can't protect everyone. Navani begins the process of accepting she's a scholar. Ven Lee accepts that she can be redeemed and she can make up for the actions in her past. And Shallan accepts she killed her first friend. So yeah, for the overall story, I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10. And structure-wise, my goodness, the structure here left quite a bit to be desired. Some sequences themselves were plotted out quite well. As a point of reference, I'd say Words of Radiance was a lot better paced. And don't get me wrong in any regard, books this long, are incredibly hard to pace well. That being said, it was lacking though. Yeah, structure-wise, 5 out of 10. The only real problem I had with the lore in this book is it could have tied into the main story a little better. We got a good bit of legwork put in having to do with, you know, anti-light weapons, but a good amount of the lore that's revealed by Navani was kind of bogged down. Other than that though, there was some fascinating stuff in here. Everything having to do with the Honorspren was fantastic. Everything having to do with Ishar was just horrifying. I am so down for more horror in Sanderson's works. I do appreciate we learned a good amount about Lifelight. This is what powers both the sibling and Lift's powers. This is sort of Cultivation's equivalent of Stormlight. Yeah. Lore-wise, 9 out of 10. This book gets a 10 out of 10 for pretty twinkling lights. We got 3 different types of light. Anti-light. The tower explodes with light. Shadesmar, I assume, twinkles in some way. Pretty twinkling lights, definite 10 out of 10. Okay, round up. We got a 6 out of 10 for story. Gonna get a 5 out of 10 for structure, a 9 out of 10 for lore, and a 10 out of 10 for pretty twinkling lights. Yeah. I think that about rounds it up. Yeah, I think this is gonna be my last vlog for a while. I do have quite a few interesting videos already on the way though. stay tuned for that. Unless something drastic changes, my next one's gonna be focusing on Odium, how he's under new management. Yeah, that's terrifying, man. Yeah, do a like, do a subscribe. What else is there? Do a comment. Peace.